Alrighty, I think we are live for day 4. Welcome back, everybody, and happy Thursday. Let me get my screen all set up for you guys here. I can see some of you guys are on with me. Go ahead and say hello. I want to make sure you guys can hear me and see me as always. And I will adjust my screen so that you all can see my day 4 slides. And yeah, good morning, guys. How are you all doing? And how's everybody enjoying the challenge? And what did you guys think of day 3? Type me in the chat if you are happy with how your blood sugar is responding to this 5-day challenge. I know that the Facebook group has been buzzing. It's been really, really fun to watch. Everybody see their blood sugar coming down so significantly. So again, go ahead and type me in the chat if you're happy with what you've learned so far, you're happy with your blood sugar reading so far. Yeah, it's just really cool. Like I said, it's really cool for us to see what's possible in such a short time span. Because people struggle, like we talked about in day 1, people struggle with diabetes for decades, a lifetime. And so it's pretty cool to see you guys get results in just a couple days. For some reason, my chat doesn't seem to be coming through, but you guys keep saying hello. I'll keep refreshing it and see what happens here. There we go. Hi, Sherry, Barry, Sarah, Leslie, Denitra, Tom, Catherine, David, Terry, Claudia, Janet, Pat, Rebecca, Catherine, Paula, Donna, Colleen, Connie, Margaret, Mary, Georgia's here, Debbie's here, Muriel's here, Teresa, Bill, Kim, Cindy, Leslie, and lots more coming in. Hi, everybody. Hi, Greg, Sonia, Julie, Dell, Sandeep, Agiga. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name. Mary Amanda. Hi, Janice. Cool, cool. Awesome. Janice says she feels like her highs are 30 points lower than usual. That is awesome, Janice. And Roger is picking up his CGM this afternoon. That is so exciting. I have had a lot of fun wearing mine. Again, you guys can get a discounted CGM with my discount. We posted the link to do that in the Facebook group. It's really 3-step instructions. This is by far the least expensive way to get a CGM if your doctor will not write a prescription. And most doctors won't write a prescription because the insurance companies will only cover a CGM if you are on insulin injections. So this is the workaround. It's a 3-step process where you order the prescription through Tastermonial. Tastermonial has doctors on staff who are willing to write you a prescription. You pay a small fee for that. You can select a 1-month, 3-month, or 6-month supply. It's cheaper, obviously, if you select the 6-month or the 3-month. And then what you do is they send you a form, you fill it out, you select your pharmacy of choice, and then the doctor at Tastermonial will send the prescription over to your pharmacy, and then you just go pick up your sensor at your pharmacy. So I know a bunch of you guys this week have been ordering the CGMs through that process. And then what you do is, because you're going to be paying out of pocket when you get to the pharmacy for the CGM sensor, you go to goodrx.com, goodrx.com, and then you get a coupon for your pharmacy. So you search for your pharmacy, and you find a coupon and you bring that in. You can bring it on, like you can have the GoodRx can text it to you, so you have it on your phone, or email it to you, or you can do it right there in the pharmacy and show it to the pharmacist. They'll scan the coupon, and then you get the CGM sensors at the discounted price. So, well worth it. I know a lot of you guys have been asking really good questions in the Facebook group. I've seen people saying, if I want to test, for example, I saw a question this morning. Someone said, I really want to test Diet Coke, right? Like they want to test a sugar-free soda. And she said, if I'm looking to see when my blood sugar peaks from it, how soon should I test? Because she remembered that I made a comment about how things like juices and liquids are going to enter our bloodstream more quickly. They're not going to take a full 60 or 90 minutes, right? And so I said, we're definitely playing the guessing game with something like that, but I would suggest testing around the 30-minute mark if you want to test a drink of some sort. But I said, you really don't know when you're doing a finger prick. We're really just making an educated guess as to when the blood sugar is going to peak. So we don't know if it's going to be at the 30-minute mark, at the 18-minute mark, at the 38-minute mark, right? So we're always making educated guesses when we're doing the finger pricks. But when you're wearing a CGM like this, you just look at your cell phone and you see what your blood sugar is doing every single minute of the day. So yeah, just another push for those of you to get a CGM if you've never had one before. It doesn't need to be something you commit to for the rest of your life. Maybe it's just something you wear for 1 month. You know, each sensor lasts for 14 days. So you slap one sensor on, wear it for 14 days, pay really close attention to how your blood sugar is trending and which foods are spiking you, and which foods are not. And then you maybe take a break and save that other, that second sensor. If you get the 1 month supply, save it for a rainy day when you're curious and want to test some more things. So I want to also remind you before we dive into our day 4 training, if you're joining late, that you can find, or if you missed a day, you can find all the replays at the top of the 5-Day Challenge Facebook group. They're all under the featured tab. So if you look at the top of the 5-Day Challenge Facebook group, you'll see a featured tab. If you click on that, you will see all the daily replays and all the daily posts. Like the day 1 post for your homework with instructions, the day 2 post, the day 3 post, okay? So at the end of today's training, I will pin the day 4 replay to the featured tab. And yeah. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is this morning, your email, I sent out an email for our day 4 assignment. So we're going to go over the signs and symptoms of insulin resistance today, which is really interesting for a lot of people, because I think a lot of people assume it's just high blood sugar and just in high A1C, and maybe like a couple symptoms like, you have to pee a lot or you're really, really thirsty. Like those are symptoms of type 2 diabetes, but there are so many more. And I think that this training usually resonates pretty deeply with a lot of people. So again, my chat is not populating today. Sometimes Facebook does that. So I'm not able to watch your comments in real time. I have to keep refreshing every time I want to see the comments coming in. But I think we can go ahead and dive into our day 4 training. So again, you should have received an email this morning. You will receive another email later today. What your homework assignment today is going to be is to fill out a 2-minute diabetes symptom questionnaire. Literally, I created this little form and it's a 2-minute questionnaire. You go in and you're basically ranking the symptoms that we're going to talk about today on a scale of 1 to 5. And just to kind of see where you're at. And you can actually revisit and retake this form over and over again in the future and see how your symptoms improve. So maybe you're ranking neuropathy, which is that painful tingling or numbness in your hands and feet. Maybe right now you're at a 5. And maybe if you stick with what we're teaching you this week, by next month or the next month or two, you're down to a 3. And in 3, 4, 5 months, you're down to a 1. So it's not uncommon that we see big reductions in some of these symptoms. So no big deal if you didn't fill out that form yet. You'll have an opportunity to do it later today as well. So no big deal. But let's go ahead and get into our day 4 training. Yesterday, we talked about insulin, and we really got clear on what insulin resistance is, right? So just kind of to recap and remind everybody what insulin is. So first off, insulin is a fat storage hormone that's produced by our pancreas. So this does not anything, how do I say this? Anything that raises insulin, this is not just for people who are on insulin injections. So what I'm trying to say is it doesn't matter if the insulin is coming from your pancreas or an injection, the outcome is always the same. So remembering that people with type 2 diabetes, the third bullet here, people with type 2 diabetes produce plenty of insulin. In fact, if you were to have your insulin levels tested, you would see that you have hyperinsulinemia, high insulin levels, higher than normal. So again, the way that we treat type 2 diabetes in the US, the way that Western medicine treats type 2 diabetes is backwards, because we're acting as if you're not producing enough insulin and we're throwing gasoline on the fire, giving you more insulin or medications that stimulate your pancreas to increase your insulin levels. That's backwards, because the high insulin levels are what's causing problems. It's what's causing the insulin resistance to begin with. And just remembering also that insulin is a hormone it's your only way to lower your blood sugar. Aside from burning it off by exerting yourself, When our blood sugar rises, insulin always follows because insulin's job is to take that sugar out of your bloodstream and pack it away. So also remembering that the opposite of insulin resistance is insulin sensitivity. It's really, really important information to have. So by the end of this challenge, I hope that you understand that your goal, if you want to put diabetes in remission and get that A1C out of the danger zone, then your goal is to become insulin sensitive. And insulin resistance is reversible. The opposite, again, is insulin sensitivity. So this is repairable with the right approach. We talked extensively about yesterday about how it's all about getting your insulin levels down. You remove what's causing the resistance and you become sensitive to it again, right? The high insulin levels are causing the resistance. So you bring your insulin levels down and you become sensitive to it again. Just like the alcohol analogy I gave you yesterday, you take someone who's severely resistant to alcohol. In other words, they have built up a very strong tolerance to it, right? They have a really high tolerance. They drink a lot. You remove their exposure to the alcohol, they get sober for a few months, they become sensitive to it again. Now it doesn't take them eight cocktails to get a buzz. Maybe it takes 3, right? They're much more sensitive now. So we're doing the same exact thing with insulin and insulin resistance. Again, if you didn't watch yesterday's training, I think I decided yesterday that day 3 is truly my favorite day of the 5-day challenge. It's my favorite topic to teach about. So if you didn't catch day 3, I definitely recommend going back and watching it. And it's probably the most complex day. So I would also say if you have time, it would be worth maybe even revisiting the day 3 training, just to really cement that information into your head. Okay, wow, my chat just populated here. Hold on. I'm not going to be able to read through all the comments, guys, but I go through some of them afterwards. So just remembering, again, this is more review from yesterday, that persistently high insulin is what causes the insulin resistance, and that persistently low insulin reverses it. So just like I just said with the alcohol analogy. So let's go ahead and dive into today's training, which is signs and symptoms of insulin resistance. Okay, so these are like the bare minimum, basic, well-known signs and symptoms. So having a fasting morning blood sugar over 100 milligrams per deciliter. We talked about that a lot on day 1 with the dawn phenomenon. And I assured you guys that having a high morning number was not a reflection of your dinner from the night before. Okay, so the high morning number is not a reflection of dinner from the night before, but it is an indication that you have insulin resistance, okay? Because while everybody gets that surge of cortisol in the morning, whether you have diabetes or not, everybody gets the surge of cortisol in the morning that tries to get sugar out of storage and put it in your bloodstream. Everybody gets that. But the difference is between someone who's insulin resistant and someone who's insulin sensitive is someone who's insulin sensitive, insulin's going to come out when their blood sugar starts to rise and bring their blood sugar back down. So that's the difference. So if you are experiencing blood sugar over 100 in the morning, tells us that you have some insulin resistance. Again, that's repairable. So another symptom would be having your A1C over 5.7. Again, you guys are already aware of this. The other thing I haven't mentioned is that by the time a person's A1C creeps over 5.7, they've been developing insulin resistance for probably years, a very long time. So the A1C is actually a late marker. What would be an earlier marker is if we were testing fasting insulin, because again, insulin is rising and rising and rising to keep your blood sugar down. And it can do that for a very long time before the A1C starts to climb. So that's why I think that pre-diabetes, which is having an A1C between 5.7 and 6.5, to me, I'm like, it's just a slightly less progressed version of full-blown type 2 diabetes. We treat it exactly the same. It should be treated exactly the same through the strategies that we're teaching you. You get insulin levels down. But in my opinion, the real pre-diabetes would be based on an elevated fasting insulin. So someone who has hyperinsulinemia, high insulin levels, I would say you are on the path to developing type 2 diabetes and you do have insulin resistance. If your insulin levels are high, you do have insulin resistance. Having blood sugar, like your baseline blood sugar between meals, over 140 milligrams per deciliter. Would be considered elevated blood sugar. And then all the symptoms of type 2 diabetes, which we're going to get into right now. So I'll go through these. What I like to usually do when I go through over this slide is ask you guys to drop a number in the chat. So tally these up and drop a number in the chat. Tell us how many of these symptoms you are currently experiencing. Again, these are all symptoms of type 2 diabetes. I'll refresh my comments here as I go through, and I'll talk about each one of these and what they stem from, so you have a better understanding of why you might be experiencing these things. So one really common and often one of the first symptoms of type 2 diabetes is excessive thirst and urination. So I know this is often why people go to the doctor, especially if they have a strong family history and they are they're familiar with this symptom, right? Like maybe you knew that your aunt or your mom or your sibling said, "Oh, I just was so thirsty and peeing all the time, and then I found out it was because my blood sugar was really high." So for a lot of people, that's like when the alarm bells go off and they go in to get to their doctor and say, "Hey, can I be tested?" And the doctor goes, "Yep, you've got diabetes." So excessive thirst and urination, this is happening because there's so much sugar in your bloodstream. Like your blood sugar is so high that your body's trying to dilute it. You're literally trying to water it down and pee it out. So that's what's happening. You get really thirsty and you start peeing a lot. The second bullet here would be difficulty losing weight, aka weight loss resistant. How many of you guys have weight loss resistance? It seems like it doesn't matter how hard you exercise, how many calories you eat, it doesn't matter how much you limit your portions. You've tried all kinds of things and you just can't seem to even lose 5 pounds. This is weight loss resistance, and the reasoning behind this being such a common symptom of type 2 diabetes is going back to those high insulin levels. So again, insulin is a fat storage hormone. When insulin is high, it blocks our ability to burn fat. In fact, insulin's really good at making fat. So what it does is it takes all that extra sugar floating around in your bloodstream and then it packs it away as body fat. We have a limited capacity to store excess sugar in our body, like in our liver and our muscles, but we have an unlimited capacity to pack it up and store it as body fat. So that's what insulin's doing. If you have difficulty losing weight, it's because your insulin levels are high. We bring the insulin levels down, you can lose some weight. You can tap into body fat again. Weight in the midsection. Let me refresh my page here. Yeah, too bad my comments aren't coming through today. So another symptom would be weight right in the midsection. So there's a strong correlation between people getting that visceral fat around their organs, which is the most dangerous. It's the most dangerous type of body fat. So for example, what I mean is fat in our thighs is not nearly as harmful or as damaging as fat around our organs, our liver, our pancreas, our spleen, right? Our kidneys. And actually, what also happens is the organs can get fatty, right? Non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, fatty pancreas. Like our organs can actually start to get fatty too, which is very damaging. So weight in the midsection is a definite symptom. I would say almost everybody, I would guess like 95% of people with type 2 diabetes would say, "Yep, I've got some excess weight, right? I carry my weight right in the middle." So this is really, really common. I also know that we probably have a few people here who are at a healthy weight, right? And they don't want to lose weight. And so we can talk a little bit about that as well. But really, there are ways to reverse insulin resistance that don't result in excessive weight loss. I will say most people who have weight to lose, they follow the program and they will lose weight. Like you get your insulin levels down, you will lose weight, right? But those who are at like kind of a healthy weight, we don't generally see a whole huge issue with that. There are strategies that we use to kind of maintain your current weight, but also reverse the insulin resistance because it's really, really important, right? That high blood sugar floating around in your bloodstream over time is very damaging. It's one thing if you eat a meal, have a big spike, and then it comes back down a couple hours and it's just this little blip. It's a whole nother thing when you're walking around 24 hours a day with elevated blood sugar, right? Like I have, again, no history of diabetes. So my blood sugar hangs out in the normal range, but I have tested enough times to see my blood sugar spike all the way up to 200, right? When I eat a bowl of rice, my blood sugar spikes up to 200, but it's just there for the short term and it comes back down. So I feel really thirsty this morning. Okay, and then let's see, peripheral neuropathy. This is the painful tingling. It's not always painful. Sometimes it just feels like numbness or tingling, but sometimes it's very painful. Loss of sensation kind of feeling in your hands and feet. It's usually your hands and feet. It can happen anywhere, but usually it's the extremities. To go along with this, I would also say erectile dysfunction. It's like the loss of blood flow and circulation to extremities. So erectile dysfunction can also fall under the category of poor circulation, peripheral neuropathy kind of thing. The peripheral neuropathy is actually nerve damage though. And so it's the chronically high, long lasting, super high blood sugar starts damaging the nerves. Um, and a lot of people have been told that the peripheral neuropathy is irreversible. That's actually not true. Maybe at a certain point, there's maybe a point of no return, but I've worked with dozens of people who said their peripheral neuropathy is gone. I've worked with lots of people who just see huge improvements. Like they're like, oh, yep, I used to have such bad tingling in my feet at night. For some reason, it seems to happen at night. I actually don't know why. Must be a circadian rhythm thing. But for some people, they experience it a lot at night and it goes away. They go, it's like a one instead of on a scale of 1 to 5, like instead of a 5 now. So that's always really nice to hear. So just know if you're dealing with that, you can expect improvements there as well as you get your blood sugar down. And actually, fun fact is some of these symptoms go away as you get good control over your blood sugar. And then interestingly, you might have a splurge, right? Maybe you go get an ice cream with your grandkid or whatever, and your blood sugar shoots up maybe 250 or something like that. And all of a sudden, you go, oh my gosh, my inflammation's back. I got super thirsty. My peripheral neuropathy, my hands or my feet started tingling. So actually, some of these symptoms come roaring back, and it's always a good reminder like, okay, this is why I stay on track 90% of the time, right? Vision loss. Hopefully not too many of you guys are dealing with this, but I've also worked with a lot of people who go to their eye doctor, and their eye doctor actually says, hey, you're getting like vision damage from this chronically high blood sugar. Your diabetes is causing, they can visibly see that you're having vision damage specifically from high blood sugar. So vision loss is another really common one. If it goes unchecked, you can go blind. You can completely lose your vision, right? So sadly, that's a really life-altering symptom that type 2 diabetes can create. Again, left unchecked, right? Poor circulation. So again, kind of a little bit related to that peripheral neuropathy, definitely related to erectile dysfunction. In fact, I have read, and I think this is probably true. I have read that erectile dysfunction can actually be one of the first symptoms for a man that he's becoming insulin resistant. So just something to consider if that is you, that could be one of the early symptoms. Insatiable appetite or cravings. I call this, the more medical term for this would be leptin resistance. So leptin is a satiety hormone. Leptin is a hormone. It's one of our hunger hormones. Leptin tells us when we're full. And so just like we can become insulin resistant or alcohol resistant, where you have a really strong tolerance to alcohol and it takes more alcohol or more insulin to have its effect, we can become leptin resistant. So again, leptin tells us when we're full. It's a satiety hormone that tells us when we're full. But if we're resistant to it, then we don't feel full when we should, right? We eat a meal, we could eat a huge meal, and our stomach could physically be full, even distended, and we don't feel satisfied because leptin, we don't, because we're leptin resistant. So leptin's coming out and flooding our system, but we don't feel the effects. We don't feel the satiety, right? So if you feel like after you eat, you still feel snacky, you still feel hungry, you don't feel satisfied, then you probably are dealing with leptin resistance. And what I'll also say about this is that insulin resistance and leptin resistance pretty much go hand in hand. Like, I would say 99% of the time, if someone is if someone is insulin resistant, they're also leptin resistant because the same exact things trigger the two, right? What keeps insulin levels high? Eating too much, eating too frequently. I wouldn't say too much, but eating too frequently, eating too many carbohydrates, like which we burn through really quickly. So when you eat a high carbohydrate diet, you're doing a meal and a snack and a meal and a snack and a meal and a snack. Well, every single meal, you're increasing your insulin, you're increasing your leptin. Those chronically high leptin and chronically high insulin causes you to become resistant to these hormones. So they don't have the same effect that they should. So that's a really common, even like early stages of insulin resistance when someone doesn't even have type 2 diabetes. They just feel hungry all the time, snacky all the time, unsatisfied, have cravings, that kind of thing. Low energy or brain fog. Guys, our brain needs glucose, right? That's sugar, right? Our brain needs glucose. And when we're insulin resistant, we can't get the sugar into the cells of our brain, and our brain is starving for that. Our brain also loves ketones, and so when we don't switch between the two fuel sources, which people with insulin resistance tend to be in sugar burning mode, and they've lost their ability to burn fat for fuel. We want to be able to have the metabolic flexibility to do both, but we don't give ourselves the opportunity. Then our brain is starving of fuel. And also related to this, science is starting to show that many cases of dementia and Alzheimer's are actually insulin resistance of the brain. It's been pretty much debunked that it's like plaque in the brain or that it's caused by aluminum. And now they're saying, holy cow, it's insulin resistance of the brain. Now, I'm not going to go so far as to say 100% of cases of dementia is insulin resistance, but I bet you it's a heck of a lot more than we've given it credit for. So we're starting to coin this type 3 diabetes. It's the dementia and Alzheimer's caused by insulin resistance. So, and the good news is if you're starting to get that brain fog and low energy, like that comes roaring back as soon as you get your blood sugar down and reverse the insulin resistance. Your cells are not going to be starving of this glucose anymore. You're going to fuel your brain with ketones, fuel your brain with glucose. So that's really exciting, and you can expect that pretty early on. Inflammation. Huge connection between inflammation and high insulin levels. So another thing about insulin, high insulin, it fuels inflammation. And so when we talk about inflammation, yes, we're talking about pain in your tendons and ligaments and joints, right? So a lot of people just say, I'm achy, like standing up out of a chair, or like forget about exercising when you're inflamed, right? Like that's why I don't even push exercise on my clients. I'm like, let's work on your blood sugar. All this inflammation is going to come down, and then you can think about moving more. Not my area of expertise, but I mean, for someone with diabetes to go to their doctor and be told you need to diet and exercise to lose some weight, it's like when you're that inflamed and you're 100 pounds overweight, exercise is really hard, right? So let's work on diet. It's the most impactful thing to work on, anyways. But inflammation, guys. Also, what goes along with inflammation, or one symptom of inflammation is high blood pressure. So while a lot of people think a high blood pressure is completely unrelated, you guys, it's very closely related to your insulin levels. This is why almost everyone with type 2 diabetes has high blood pressure. Okay? And as my client like as you guys do what we're doing this week and as my clients do what I teach them, their blood pressure comes down big time. So much so that I will tell you a lot of my clients on blood pressure meds have to come off of them because the blood pressure meds, they're over medicated at that point. Their blood pressure comes down so much that it's actually low. So they get off the blood pressure meds, which is great because they want fewer medications and then their blood pressure normalizes, right? So it's a very beautiful thing. So if you're dealing with high blood pressure or any other source of inflammation like arthritis, right? Anything that ends in an itis is inflammation. So arthritis, then you can expect that your inflammation will improve greatly as you bring your blood sugar down and your insulin levels follow and come down. The last bullet I have here is high triglycerides. Gosh, there's more symptoms that should be on this list though. Like I said earlier, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, gout, like there's so many other symptoms that belong here. But high triglycerides. So a lot of people are really concerned about their cholesterol levels. And it's interesting because we tend to look at high blood sugar and high insulin as two unrelated issues. And the truth is they stem, again, like so many of these things, they stem from the same root cause and therefore they respond well to the same exact solution. So when people come to me, and so many of you guys have already been asking this in the group, and they say, I have diabetes, but I also have high blood pressure or high cholesterol, or all three most often. I need to, maybe they've been told they need to cut back their fat intake, right? Quit eating red meat for the cholesterol, cut back their salt for the high blood pressure, and then they're told cut their carbs for the high blood sugar, right? That's not true, guys. There's so much misinformation floating around on the internet. The reality is you get your blood sugar under control, your insulin comes down, your blood pressure will come down, your triglycerides will come down, your cholesterol ratios will improve. So it's all comes back to the same thing. In fact, when you look at going back to blood pressure, when you compare a low sodium or a DASH diet, right? The DASH diet's like the famous blood pressure lowering diet that doesn't really work. When you compare the DASH diet, like a low sodium diet, you cut your salt, compared to a very low carb diet for blood pressure lowering effects, low carb diet knocks it out of the park, like blows the low sodium out of the water. So low sodium has pretty minor effect on our blood pressure. Low carb, big effect on our blood pressure. And then same thing with triglycerides. You know what triglycerides are, you guys? They're fat floating around in our bloodstream. If we want to point our finger at one marker on a cholesterol panel, a lipid panel, that causes heart disease, it's the triglycerides, not the LDL, not the total cholesterol. Point your finger at the triglycerides. These are fat floating around in your bloodstream. And the connection here is, again, remember, insulin. I want to go back to this slide. Insulin, first bullet here, is a fat storage hormone. Okay? Insulin is a fat storage hormone. When insulin's high, it's building and manufacturing and packing away fat. So it's packing away fat in your bloodstream as triglycerides. It's packing away fat in your liver. That's non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And it's causing you to have a difficult time losing weight, or it's causing you to actually gain weight. So hopefully that makes sense. And again, I'm going to refresh. I keep trying to refresh my screen here. Okay, you guys are saying, I got my team on. Thank you, Callie and Tiana. I know that you guys are saying that you guys are monitoring the chat for me. That's awesome. Thank you. Yeah, because I can't keep my eye on that, but I will go through a little bit afterwards. But you guys can trust if Callie, Callista, or Tiana are responding to you guys and answering your questions in the chat. That's my team, so you guys can definitely trust their advice and insight here. It doesn't matter if the insulin is coming from your pancreas or an injection, the outcome is the same. Okay, so you don't have to be on insulin injections to be having all these symptoms or to be developing insulin resistance, the truth is it starts with your pancreas. It starts with eating diet and lifestyle choices that are causing your insulin levels to rise to keep your blood sugar in check. And again, for a very long time, insulin levels, our pancreas can keep up and keep producing more and more insulin and keep our blood sugar in range. So when you go in and get your A1C, it'll remain under 5.7 in the healthy range for years as your insulin levels are climbing. So it starts with your pancreas producing all this insulin. And then what happens usually, usually what happens is by the time your A1C creeps over 5.7, your doctor writes a prescription, usually metformin first. We learned yesterday when you guys Googled your medications that metformin doesn't is one of the few medications for diabetes that actually doesn't increase your insulin levels. But you do that for a while without addressing the underlying cause of the high blood sugar and the high insulin. If we don't address the underlying cause, your insulin levels continue to climb and your blood sugar starts to climb as well because you're becoming so insulin resistant that the normal amount of insulin or even extra insulin is no longer doing the job. Just like that guy, he becomes so resistant to alcohol that he's no longer getting a buzz off of 8 drinks. So what does he need? If he wants to get a buzz, he's got to do 10 drinks now, right? So your insulin levels are climbing to keep your blood sugar in range. What usually happens is, again, left unchecked, we don't address the underlying cause. You go back to the doctor 6 months later, a year later, your A1C keeps climbing higher. And so the doctor writes another prescription, this time a more powerful prescription. And you guys looked up your medications yesterday and you learned that most of them, one of the ways that they work is they tell your pancreas to produce more insulin. They stimulate your pancreas to pump out more insulin. Does it work? Yes, it works just like the guy who can't get a buzz off of 8 drinks. If he takes 10, he's going to get a buzz. It works the same way. So yes, it works at first. But again, he was faced with 2 options. Either if he wanted to become sensitive to alcohol again, right, or if he wanted to get a buzz, he could look at it 2 ways. Increase his alcohol intake, i.e. throw gasoline on the fire so that he can get that buzz. So now he's at 10 drinks a day. Or he could have gotten sober for 3 months, become sensitive to alcohol again by doing that. And then when he drinks again, he's going to get a buzz off of even just 4 drinks maybe, right? So we're doing the same thing. With insulin resistance. We're going to the doctor, we're starting to take these meds, we're increasing our insulin levels and becoming more and more insulin resistant. When the other option that's free and right in front of us and available to us is to harness the power of insulin to our advantage and harness the power of low insulin through diet and lifestyle, which is what we're teaching you guys this week. So I have sprinkled in some success stories to share with you guys. These are real people I've worked with, and many of them started here with the 5-day challenge. And I'm going to share a lot more of these tomorrow, but I find that people really, really enjoy hearing these success stories. So this is Jane. Jane shared that by following what we were teaching her, she says, in 6 months, I have made so much progress. It's unbelievable. She said, my A1C went from 11.9, very high, to 7.6 to 5.9. She says the bonus is I'm down 50 pounds and feel great. Now I need to go buy new clothes. And so what I want to tell you about Jane is she was suffering from the majority of the symptoms that I listed earlier. She had weight that wouldn't budge. Her energy levels were in the tank. Jane has 11, and probably by now I think she has like 13 grandkids who all live locally. She still works a full-time job, or at least, I haven't spoken to Jane in a little while now. But a couple years ago when we were working together, she had 11 grandkids, 2 on the way, was still working a full-time job on a college campus where she had to walk across the campus. She was in a big city, so she was commuting public transportation to work, walking across the campus and back, and commuting back home 5 days a week, and then also being a very involved and active grandma for her grandchildren and, babysitting and all these things, which she loved, but she didn't have energy and she was inflamed and she was overweight and she was really struggling. So Jane is just one example of someone who's done really, really well and was just floored by how easy it really was when she tried everything in the past. And, the doctor was threatening more prescriptions, and she just really was desperate to find a better way. And she did. And by the way, this was like I want to say her A1C from 11.9 to 7.6 to 5.9 was like in a 4 month time frame, I want to say. And the reason it looked like that was because the 11.9, she was due for an A1C like within 2 months of working with me, or a month of working with me or something. So she got an A1C at 7.6, but it wasn't the full picture of what we were doing until she went back and got that 5.9. She was like in tears. So it's really cool. So how did Jane lose 50 pounds though, right? Without calorie restriction, without portion control. We taught you guys yesterday, or actually on day 2. So we're teaching you guys this week to eat nice, big, healthy portions, right? Like nice, big, satiating meals. We do not want you guys eating mini meals, like you may have been taught to eat a meal and a snack and a meal and a snack. That's actually not what we want to do. We would rather see you eat 3 big square meals. So how did Jane lose 50 pounds? How did so many of my clients lose weight? Almost all of my clients lose weight. So it comes back to understanding that obesity doesn't cause diabetes. Again, obesity and insulin resistance have the same root cause. They're both caused by high insulin levels. So high insulin is causing insulin resistance that causes the high blood sugar and the type 2 diabetes diagnosis. But high insulin insulin's a fat storage hormone. When insulin is high, we cannot burn fat. We can only store it. So they share, both weight loss resistance and insulin resistance share the same exact solution. It is all about, and I promise you, I can say this with certainty, it's less about calories and way more about the hormone insulin. So we get insulin down, and then you can tap into body fat and burn it off. And when insulin's high, we cannot do that. When insulin's high, it blocks our ability to burn body fat. So here's a little a little demonstration of what I'm saying. So I like to think of insulin as a bodyguard for our fat cells. Okay, so when insulin is high, we cannot burn fat. We can only store it. So insulin's like a bodyguard. It's blocking our ability to burn fat. So really, really important to remember when your insulin's high. And here's another thing. This is why, and I've learned this through experience working with hundreds and hundreds of people at this point, is that when you take 2 different people, both overweight, both type 2 diabetes, right? And one person in 3 months, like Jane, loses 50 pounds. And the other person only loses 8, which I don't even like to say only, because 8 pounds of body fat is significant, okay? But you take 2 different people and you give them 3 months, they're doing the exact same things. One person loses 50 pounds, the other person loses 8 pounds. Why is that, right? It comes back to insulin and their personal bio-individual level of insulin resistance. So I'll give you another example of that. So let's compare Jane to my client, Pat, who has shared this many times. So I feel comfortable sharing her story. Pat, in her first 12 weeks working with me, I think she only lost 8 pounds, or maybe 12. It was a lot lower. But Pat had also been dealing with diabetes for 30 years. And Pat's insulin levels were she was on insulin injections. So we know her insulin levels between her pancreas and her injections were like really high. And she was able to reduce her insulin really quickly. But even still, her insulin levels were too high, even still, for her to be able to tap into a whole lot of body fat. So it was 8 pounds the first 12 weeks. And then within a year, she had also lost 50 pounds. So it just took her longer than it took Jane for her insulin levels to come down. Jane's body responded really quickly and said, oh, I'm going to drop my insulin. I don't need all this insulin. So her pain, and again, it doesn't matter if the insulin's coming from the pancreas or an injection. Outcome is exactly the same every time. So you could take Pat's story and apply it to someone else. My client, Elaine. Elaine's never been on insulin injections. Same thing with Elaine though. First 12 weeks, she lost maybe 12 pounds. Today, she's 50 pounds down. It just took longer for her insulin levels to drop significantly enough that she could burn a lot of body fat. So again, guys, this is a marathon, not a race. You didn't develop insulin resistance overnight. This developed over a very long time. So I'll get off my soapbox about that. Hopefully that makes sense. John's probably in the chat today because he always joins us for the 5-day challenge, and I've seen him the last 3 days. But John's another example of someone who's lost a lot of weight. He says in November my A1C was 12.3. In May it was 5.6 after Mallory's program. And I think John's A1C is now, he's maintained it like at that like 5.6 or lower for a very long time now. So this is not like a quick fix. This is something that people are doing and maintaining. So it's different than something like Weight Watchers or Noom or something that people like jump on and then they fall off, right? John's been able to maintain his A1C at a very healthy, he's at like 5.4, I want to say right now. And just look at his transformation. So John's lost a lot of weight, and it all comes back to insulin. Oh, and his blood pressure is normalized, his cholesterol ratios are improved, like all the things, right? This is an old client of mine, Dave, and Dave and I stay in touch. We actually meet for coffee. He's one of my very few past clients that lives locally. So I see Dave on a regular basis. And I can say Dave was one of the first like 5 people to work with me inside the type 2 transformation program 3 years ago. So Dave is a longtime client of mine, and it's really cool to see that he's also more than maintained his initial results. So Dave is someone I like to share his story because I think a lot of people here are wondering what gives. Like they're like, I eat healthy, I exercise, what gives? Why can't I get this under control? And so Dave's story will really resonate with you because Dave loves to cook. He cooks from scratch. Between him and his wife, he is the definite cook in the family. He walks 4.5 miles every single morning religiously. At this point, I think he's 70 years old, right? But like at the time that he wrote this quote, he's 68 years old. He had inflammation. Like every day he had to take anti-inflammatory and NSAID at the end of every day because the inflammation in his ankles would hurt so bad. But he was so determined, like so many of you, he was so motivated and so determined that he would still get up and walk every single morning, 4.5 miles. He'd ice his ankles and take his anti-inflammatory and do it all again the next day and go to his doctor every 3 months and could never get his A1C under 5.7. And his doctor was always saying, Dave, you got to lose weight. I want to start you on metformin. We got to get your blood sugar and A1C down. And he just kept saying, I have to find a way to do this on my own. Dave found me. He joined the type 2 transformation program. In 3 months, he lost 40 pounds. His A1C was down to 5.8 at the end of our 3 weeks together. His inflammation was completely gone. He said, I haven't taken ibuprofen or whatever over the counter. He was taking Tylenol. He says, I haven't taken an anti-inflammatory or had to ice my ankles in months. And he's like, I have to buy new clothes. My shorts are too big. My pants are too big. And his glucose was below 90 at his next A1C checkup. Happy to report that ever since then, Dave's A1C has been even lower. So his A1C right now is like 5.4. It's been between 5.4 and 5.6 for the last 3 years. Like, how incredible is that? So again, and at this point, he also has lost 50 pounds. And maintained it, and he says, I just feel so much better. And he goes, I understand now what I was doing wrong, even though I was eating healthy and cooking everything from scratch. So that kind of concludes our day 4. Hopefully that was helpful. I really wish I could have seen your comments coming in, but Facebook was being funny today. So I'll be sure to check those out when I sign off here. This is what the day 4 post looks like. So your 2 micro assignments for today is to fill out that 2-minute diabetes symptom questionnaire. It's just a Google form. You'll receive a copy via email once you submit it. So again, to remind you or to let you know, the email that you receive with your copy will not be from me. It will be from Google. Okay. So take that 2-minute questionnaire. We're not going to look through all your results, but I'm going to do tomorrow. I'm going to go through some of the results. And so you can see that like 78% of you guys are dealing with weight gain or, experience the peripheral neuropathy. So we'll go over some of the results tomorrow. And then your other assignment for day 4 is, again, do the same thing you've been doing every day this week. You pick a meal following our guidelines and you test your blood sugar before and then 60 to 90 minutes afterwards, and then do the math, see how much that meal impacted your blood sugar. We're aiming for 30 points or less. And so the lower the better. Ideally, we'd like to see under 20. So the lower the better. Some of you guys might get a negative number. Maybe your blood sugar goes down 60 to 90 minutes after you eat, in which case you'll have a negative number. So in the day 4 post, you're going to put a number in the chat. We love to see what you guys are eating. So it's also helpful if you tell us what you had. That's been really fun for us this week, and also helpful for each other to get different ideas. So we'd love to see that. That's your day 4 assignment. And then we will be supporting you again today, Callista, Tiana, and I in the Facebook group. And then tomorrow, guys won't want to miss tomorrow. I'm really stinking excited. Tomorrow, like I said, we're going to go over symptoms, like the results from that symptom questionnaire. We're going to also claim your next big goal. Now that you really understand what's possible, that reversing insulin resistance and putting type 2 diabetes in remission is possible, tomorrow we're going to have you guys claim that. And then also, I know so many of you guys are asking and excited about this. You guys are asking what happens after the 5-day challenge. You guys are one step ahead of me. So tomorrow we're going to talk about an opportunity you all are going to have to continue working with me and Callista and Tiana and join hundreds of peers who have committed to this process on a deeper level, on a higher level, through the Type 2 Transformation Program. And we're opening the doors to the Type 2 Transformation Program with 2 really exciting bonuses. So that'll be available tomorrow. We're going to hop on same time, same place. And thank you guys so much for hanging out with me today. We are wrapping up 9 minutes early. So awesome. And tomorrow will be a little bit longer of a training. So just if you are interested in carving out the time, replay, as always, will be available. And guys, we will see you over in the Facebook group. Have a great rest of your day.